All right. Our next speaker came from Canada, landed in Australia in 1992, built 35 years in the insurance industry, founded Marillion Insurance Brokers in 2013, and has been a trusted partner to agricultural shows across New South Wales ever since. He knows this space inside and out. And today, he's bringing it right down to earth for us because insurance and risk management, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, guys. Safe shows, strong shows, compliance, and risk management. This is Phil Lemieux.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you for the opportunity, Ag Shows New South Wales, and congratulations on a wonderful program agenda once again. I just might give Steve a run for his money for the most boring presentation today. But let's backtrack there. This is not going to be a boring presentation, and I'll tell you why. Because effectively, what's going to happen is I'm going to give you in 15 minutes all you need to know about putting on a safe show. Executing the safe show takes a bit longer than 15 minutes, but there's 15 minutes in terms of what's important for you. I want to take a bit of a different slant, I guess, in terms of why this show is this topic is important. I'm thankful to have been invited to talk to you about this, and it's because I am going to take the audience into consideration. Having attended some of the conferences in the past, a lot of discussion on risk management, obviously, because it's such an important topic. But it's tended to have a bit of a textbook slant to it. And what I want to do today is I want to boil this down to what's important for you as show volunteers, because that's exactly what you are. You volunteers. You do this out of the kindness of your own heart. You're limited in time, but you have every intention of doing the right thing. So we'll get started with our first slide here. And so who you are. So there's 190 plus country shows. As you know, you're all volunteers. There are a myriad of activities that take place. We've got large shows, we've got medium shows, we've got small shows, we've got events happening across the grounds in some of the jurisdictions every single weekend. So there's certainly a lot going on and a lot happening. Our role as risk advisors is to wrap our hands around you and get you to appreciate the simplicity that is required to run a safe show. Simplicity in the sense that there are some things that are critical to remember, but not too many of them. So we want to be able to be there to assist you, provide a simple framework that guides you throughout that particular process. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, why is risk management important? Why does it matter? Well, firstly, it's the law, yes, but any business, any organization probably has 50 plus different laws to abide by. Now, as a small business owner myself, corporations law, workplace health and safety, tax law, corporations law, licensing, codes, regulations, etc. A lot of that stuff in my head happens because I have a mindset that I want to do the right thing. And I'm sure that is the mindset for all the volunteers that are working in your space. So if you can start with that mindset that you want to do the right thing, then you're 9 times out of 10 you're there. The thing that I want to make sure that we all pay attention to is the work health and safety, because you're putting on a show for the community. You're inviting the community onto your grounds. There's a common law duty of care specific to your activities, and a duty of care to the patrons who are joining your event, whatever that might be. So, and I guess importantly is, perhaps given some of the incidents that may have taken place of recent time, WorkSafe has taken a particular interest in some of these events as well. Now, WorkSafe is to be respected. They have significant authority. They are to be listened to and engaged with, I guess, throughout this particular process, should they ultimately show up. So just remember that mindset, doing the right thing, will get you there 9 times out of 10. Why is it also important? Because claims can happen. Now, claims can happen, incidents take place, near misses take place. We want to make sure that some of this stuff all of this stuff gets documented. If claims do happen, costs incur, your program is one that is driven by costs. If claims do occur, costs can arise, which ultimately leads to premiums being paid. Now, setting aside one and two, most importantly, people can get hurt. Okay. Injuries can take place. We've had a death in one of the shows down south. Now, if you can imagine the implications that has on the community, the implication that has on volunteers, the implication that it has on the show committee, very significant. It takes time away from the enjoyment of putting on a great show. But the reality is you're in a high risk industry. So we've got to be careful around that particular risk. So that's in a nutshell as to why risk management matters. Now, I want to talk a bit about the legal landscape. And everyone's heard me say in the past that New South Wales has been the second most litigious environment after California, which was reported back in 2016. Now, we have now taken the global mantle in terms of litigation in Australia compared to the rest of the world. I'll go on a bit further later as to what the implications are there, but effectively what's happened is the legal frameworks governing personal injury in this country has been struck in 2001. So there was tort law reform back in 2001. In 25 years, lawyers have found a way around the reform. Common law, in terms of court decisions and judgments, have been handed down, providing further precedence since the law was tabled in 2001. And in the end, lawyers find loopholes to be able to argue the case in favor of the plaintiff, and payouts continue to increase, including the sizable legal fees that get incurred by insurers in defending the matter and by complainants in pursuing their complaint against the insured. So effectively, across your program, I want to talk about the three real claims that are currently on the table at the moment, to give you an idea as to what we're dealing with. Okay, so we had a patron that tripped off steps coming down her own caravan. Oddly enough, that claim now sits at $530,000. Now, all these claims haven't been finalized yet, so the arguments are currently being debated on both sides. The dollars will be known as in the fullness of time, which could take months, even years. But just a simple trip and fall, $530,000 for a person who is perceived to be catastrophically injured. We have a volunteer through poor induction who got crushed unloading some cattle panels. That claim currently sits at about $460,000. Now, this is a volunteer, sadly, the backbone of your organizations, who has taken upon themselves to pursue a legal claim against the show. Again, a claim still remains open. We'll see where that ultimately settles. The third one is an official, a judge who was judging a horse event who got kicked in the head by a horse. The claim sits at $450,000. Now, these claims all get tabled with the assumption that there's some form of negligence on behalf of the show. Okay, now, these things just happen. What's astounding is the cost associated with that. And it's a bit around the legal framework landscape that currently exists, giving rise to these increased expectations on payouts. Now, it's interesting to note that of these three claims, there's been some sizable developments in the last 12 months across these three claims arising and coming to the dollars that we see there. It is something that is worth noting, is the fact that one of these claims completely absorbs your entire premium for 1 year on your liability program, let alone three. So just imagine what implications that has on premium costs moving forward. And that's what we're trying to mitigate through sound risk management. So it's always important, I guess, when it comes to risk management and understanding hazards at the show, what are the claims trends across the program? what are the incidents that have taken place at your show over the years, so that we can gain some knowledge and hit the ground running, not reinvent the wheel about identifying all these hazards, but identifying, looking at some of the history that has taken place. And surprisingly, trips and falls across your showground is the most common incident and claim that arises. It makes up 47% of all claims over the last 10 years across your program. So when it comes to risk management, don't think of just your high risk cat events being a horse event in the ring, the chainsaw incident, a rodeo, etc. Those, perception is they're very high risk. Yes, and you do a great job in managing that risk. But the reality is, almost 50% of your claims come from patrons just tripping and falling across hazards that exist across the ground. So be mindful of that. Yes, we've had the annual incident, which is the horse kick. We've had vehicle incidents just with traffic management. And sadly, this gave rise to the death that we faced a couple of years ago down south. So just vehicle management, vehicle movement when patrons are about, pay significant, attention to those particular risks. Rides, amusements, yes, we know about those. It is a third-party operator that manages those, but just make sure that your own vicarious exposure, grounds that they're setting on, council approvals, etc., are met and respected. Manual handling, especially when volunteers are involved in assisting and putting things in the right place. There's a lot of stuff that moves around a show at showtime. Obviously, manual handling and induction of volunteers is a very important aspect. And just structural failure, tying down marquees, grandstands, etc., that can give rise. Luckily, any damage resulting from these events haven't given rise to significant personal injury, luckily. So always use that particular information that you've got at your fingertips, and look at what past history has to tell us. So here's an acronym I'm going to be talking about for as long as I'm invited to have a chat, is RAP. Okay, 3 simple things that I want you to remember that are absolute tools and areas that can help you put on a safe show. Firstly, the website. Secondly, your risk assessment approach. And thirdly, the playbook. So firstly, the website. The Ag Show's website, it's an evolving tool. It has a lot of valuable information to be able to assist you in putting on that safe show. If you want to know stuff about first aid, go to the website. You're not going to find 3, 5, 10 pages on first aid. You're going to find 3 paragraphs on important first aid information for the show to absorb. Your volunteers, you may be starting with a lot of knowledge around first aid or whatever risk activity or event that you're trying to manage. When it comes to risk management, my view is keep it simple, give people what they need to know. If you put more than 3 paragraphs on first aid, there's just too much information. It just won't be read. The same reason why we don't put a 150 risk management page manual in front of you to read, so that you can manage your risks. It's just never going to work in this environment. So there are planning guides, there are historical show records, the information is regularly updated. There's support and contacts. That's what Ag Shows New South Wales and myself can assist with. But it's about getting a head start with the website information that's there and available for you. Now, some of the larger shows might have their own data repository, which provides valuable information. You're putting on a show for, in some cases, the 150th time. There's a lot of history to support you in managing that risk management piece along the way. So let's not lose sight of the valuable information that's on the websites and at your fingertips. The next one is risk assessment. Now, a lot of you run businesses of your own. You've identified hazards, and you've mitigate the risk of hazards giving rise to property damage, personal injury. Let's identify, let's understand what the events program looks like. Let's deal with the major risks, the high risk activities that might take place, because risk management isn't about managing every single risk across your show. It's impossible. It's too costly. So focus on the ones that have the highest risk of probability giving rise to the highest risk of severe injury. Okay, start with those. And your risk assessment template will allow you to plot your events program in terms of that probability and severity of injury. So we know there are certain events that can give rise to significant injury. Okay, probability may be low, might be high. Let's start with managing those risks that have severe risk of injury if it does occur, and perhaps a high probability in being able to give rise to an injury. So that's what a risk assessment does. A risk assessment, and there are templates and tools and pre-populated templates for the types of events you're planning across your program. Identify the hazard, assess the consequences. How bad could the injury be? The likelihood is that probability piece. Plot it on the matrix, and then let's start talking about the controls that we can put in place to be able to manage those. And we're not talking about 5 pages of controls for one particular event. We're talking about identifying the hazard, and let's put in place the necessary controls to make sure that it is going to be considered safe. Because remember, it's also the law to be able to demonstrate that as event organizers and event planners, that you can document in the event of a significant injury that you've taken your risk management and workplace health and safety seriously. And in the absence of any documentation, it's hard to share that thought and that view with those asking questions. And there can be some questions. The reality is, when you talk about probability, we've had a great record over the last 8 years with the number of claims that have arisen. Plenty of incidents. Incidents are fine. Let's document those because they're valuable information for next year. Not a lot of claims, which is great. So the probability is great. But let's focus again from a risk management perspective, those high risk, high severity type injuries, and manage those very, very carefully. So this is just a sample of a risk assessment in terms of the hazard and the controls that we can put in place across your event program. Now, the playbook. I've always called this the Bible, but it didn't work with my word wrap, so I've called it now the playbook. So the playbook is your insurance response when it comes to your event program. There's 500 plus events, maybe or so in that playbook. Category A, run them yourselves, do them all day, every day. Don't worry about, yes, risk management then yes, but you don't have to talk to us. You can do them all day, every day. Category B are risky events that are popular events at shows. Just make sure that you are running them as an outsourced arrangement with an insured third party. Okay, that means that if an event takes place, the insured third party has insurance, so they will respond, but you yourselves, the show, are also insured for any vicarious or subsidiary exposure that you may have caused in some way to the injury that's taken place by the event run by the insured third party. So there's a list there under category B. Category C are you can't run it all. And the reason for that is that, it'd be great to be able to tell the shows, hey, it's a free for all. Just make sure you risk management at all, manage the event carefully, and let's put on a good show. The reality is the severity and the frequency of potential claims for these types of events can be catastrophic. And if they are catastrophic and they give rise to claims, the claims are going to be so punitive that the premiums could become unaffordable. We want to avoid that. If you're really, really keen on putting on one of these Cat C events, let's have a chat. There's going to be a lot of information that'll be required, but that's the starting point. Category C. Category D. these are your bread and butter show events. Category D, they're high risk, yes, but run them in accordance with the rules and regulations. And when the rules, and by rules I mean the safety rules that govern your particular event. So there are on the website the rules that govern each one of these Category D events. Let's just make sure that we respect the rules and regulations, because the last thing we want to have is an event. And the worst case scenario, I guess, is you put on an event because you think it's a great idea, and then an injury takes place, and then all of a sudden the insurer tells us, we lodge a claim, the insurer tells us, well, that was an uninsured event. Okay. Well, that puts a curveball in place. If you run an event that is an approved event and things go wrong, then that's what you have insurance for. But if you run an event that is an uninsured event, then sadly, your liability policy doesn't protect you or us, but you kick into an association liability policy, which is insurance when insurance goes wrong. So it's a mismanagement type policy that covers you. So, but let's pay respect to this playbook so that we can understand exactly what you can and can't do. And let's make sure we respect the rules and regulations governing Cat D events. So mindset, she'll be right. I've heard it since I got here in 1991. She'll be right, mate. Yes, common sense goes far, but the law does require a bit more. I've spoken a bit about, the written records that are important to be able to demonstrate should someone ask, how seriously did you take your risk management? Because there's an absolute legal duty that exists around workplace health and safety. And I know you recognize all that. So let's demonstrate that through some documentation that you have taken that obligation seriously. As much as I want to shelter, these valuable volunteers who, out of the kindness of their own heart, put on a show, there are still some legal obligations that must be met. And so I encourage you, and I know you have, as you continue to take your obligations for workplace health and safety exactly the same. And when it comes to workplace health and safety, yes, your volunteers, they're treated no differently to employees. Okay, employee-employer relationship, association and volunteer relationship, exactly the same. Your obligation to your volunteers is exactly the same. So again, common sense, which you see listed on the left, and the requirement by law, which you see on the right-hand side. Neither alone is enough. Now, we spoke about your volunteers. So instructions are very, very important. Induction, so important to be able to make sure that your volunteers don't get injured in the fulfillment of their obligations. So they are your most valuable asset. So, and when it comes to your incidents that get recorded, ask, of your volunteers who perhaps witnessed these issues and these incidents, make sure that they understand their responsibility in documenting the near misses and the incidents that take place. I know there's some written procedures in terms of how you might induct your volunteers, how you might manage your volunteers in terms of clocking on and clocking off. There is that obligation, certainly under work health and safety, to extend that obligation to your volunteers. So, and, let's speak up when there's some things that aren't going right, or they're potentially, you're about to start the show and someone has responsibility for their particular area. If you think there's something that just isn't quite right, if I was putting on this event in my backyard at my home, would I be comfortable with it? But do speak up. And so often managing risk, even at short notice, can be mitigated quite easily. So depending on, of course, the risk itself. But if it's a large risk exposure, then I imagine you've already managed and covered that already. So certainly, let's extend that obligation to the volunteers. Now, a system under pressure. I spoke a bit about the legal environment at the moment. It is broken, is how I best describe it. And it is so broken that there's a federal inquiry that kicked off in March this year. And they've sought submissions from the small business industries, and it's really targeted towards the leisure and entertainment and hospitality industries, because effectively what's happening is that claims, when they arise, and they will arise, they will continue to arise, the costs are just getting out of control. And lawyers are getting more than 35% of the payments that are awarded to complainants, either defense costs, plaintiff costs, legal costs, that is, and the indemnity that gets granted to the injured person. There's a dilution of the benefits. There's a lot of delays. There's a lot of red tape that is unnecessary in being able to achieve quick settlements for injured parties. Yes, if you're injured, you might the she'll be right mentality has certainly shifted, and someone's going to be chasing the deeper pockets to try and get a certain payout. And common law precedence hasn't helped today's environment. Judges are taking sympathy on complainants with merit and without, unfortunately, and these are creating the common law environment of which the courts are navigating and lawyers are navigating today. Your plaintiff lawyers, that is. So it is very much broken, leading to the costs that I just shared with you earlier. So certainly we want to make sure that those reforms are encouraged and they continue. October 26 is when the report of the inquiry comes out. State and federal legislation reforms will be considered after that time, with hopefully an improvement of the legislative framework that supports personal injury in this country. So just to wrap up, remember, WRAP, very simple website risk assessment playbook. It's pretty much all I'm asking you to adhere to. There's some things underlying behind all of these three statements here. Just make sure that you meet those obligations and use this acronym as your guide. And lastly, you all deserve a medal. I guess you all deserve an Order of Australia, to be honest, because you're putting on the biggest small business show in your own towns. There's a lot of risk involved. What's going to attract the crowd? Well, the near risk of death, sadly, but that's something certainly that is to be recognized and to be rewarded. And I thank you very much for all the attention you give to your shows. Happy to take questions, Patrice.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. You've made insurance interesting. And recapping, and I know you've said it a lot, but I feel like we can't hear it enough. My takeaways are definitely that WRAP acronym. It's the website, it's the risk assessment templates, and it's the playbook, WRAP, WRAP. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we have some great questions for you. Firstly, Phil, Wayne from Luddenham has asked, can we get a copy of the slides? And I know the team at Ag Shows New South Wales are going to be putting your slides up on their website, and they will be available for you all this time next week. So give the team a week. Now, we have a question from Rosemary from Blaney Show. Thank you, Rosemary. Firstly, there's two questions here for you, Phil. Firstly, can you explain what sections do the stewards need a WWC check? There have been some changes. That's the first question. So I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather answer I guess I'm not familiar with the recent changes to working with children check. If people aren't aware of that acronym, but I guess that is certainly an environment that needs to be managed quite carefully, especially with the schools' active involvement. Certainly, I would imagine that volunteers dealing with children would have fulfilled an obligation to meet that requirement. Perhaps someone can help explain what has recently changed there. Again, a piece of regulation or rules that govern how to put on a safe show. But at the moment, there is certainly an obligation on your volunteers to meet that obligation. And I imagine that has gone a long way to meeting that requirement. Secondly, so should we have a volunteer sign-on sheet for each day? The answer to that is absolutely. We need to understand where the exposure to volunteers starts and finishes. As you know, a voluntary workers policy, insurance policy, protects volunteers for wages and personal injury should they suffer an injury at the show under the direction of the show. So it's easy to understand whether the volunteers under the direction of the show when they sign off, and we know when that obligation ends when they sign off at the end of the day. So absolutely necessary to make sure that the volunteers sign on and off on any given day.
Before you move on to the next one, thank you for that, Phil. Just to recap on that first question from Rosemary, we will get back to you, Rosemary, with more details about that. So don't worry about that. Awesome question. We're going to move on to Veronica's question now from February Show. What value do waivers have, Phil?
Very good question. And the hair on the back of my neck stands up anytime I hear waivers are not worth the paper they're written on. That is never true. Perhaps the only time that's true is when you think that you can have a participant sign a waiver and that absolves you of all responsibilities in terms of your duty of care to that participant. If you think that's the case, then yes, waivers are not worth the paper they're written on because you have potentially breached your duty of care to that participant. If you have applied good risk management principles and protocols to put on a safe event for that participant, and you've met in your own mind, and you can demonstrate that in a court of law, if necessary, that you have put on a safe show and the participant has signed a waiver which stipulates that they understand the risks associated with the event that they are embarking on, that the waiver will absolutely support and assist the show in mitigating and defending a claim. A waiver was the most important tool on one of the largest claims that Ag Shows New South Wales had for a participant that was injured in a horse event. The risk management was unquestioned. It was squeaky clean. The participant signed a waiver, and this claim got rejected in the Supreme Court of New South Wales as a result of the evidence provided, including the waiver. So waivers are an absolute necessity for all high risk events. The playbook tells you which events require a waiver. So if it does show that it needs a waiver, I would strongly recommend that you have those in place and you keep copies for 3 years filed away. And these days, digital copies aren't terribly difficult. So please keep those. And I know a lot of you are using digital waiver tools. They're much easier. So we certainly encourage that.
Thank you, Phil. Now, we do have some other questions that are coming through at the moment, but the team at Ag Shows New South Wales are going to grab them and send you out some information and support you to answer those questions just so we can keep on time. But Phil, thank you so much for your wisdom and your support. And of course, thank you to you all for those wonderful questions that are coming through. They will be answered. Thank you.